Marin again here, contributor to the LiDAR Master Protocol Relations in the DeFi for a while, so to speak. Second introduction from today, but here are the rock stars and the people we want to hear talking, so I'll give them the mic to introduce themselves and the projects and protocols they work with.
Hi, I'm Rose. I'm Chief Strategy at Stakestone. So we are building a universal standard of liquid ETH and BTC backed by an adaptive staking network. Being adaptive meaning that we can change the underlying strategies from like layer to symbiotic to like different like AI, deepening consensus mechanism. And right now we have about 170k ETH staked and across 140k users, stakers across the globe, and 90% utility rate for our Stone Ethereum.
So hi everyone, my name is Sergej, co-founder of 1inch, software engineer, software architect. 1inch is a bigger ecosystem. We started the aggregation among decentralized exchanges. Nowadays we have multiple products like non-custodian wallet, working hardware wallet, have intent-based protocol for swaps, and limit orders. So building a lot of things, also looking into the staking topics in terms of like we have our own staking and we can maybe improve it in space.
Hello, my name is Denison Bertram. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Tally. We are a DAO tooling platform, but we're actually now building the liquidity layer for restaking with governance protocol tokens.
I am Amadeo Brands from UNAS. We're building a liquid restaking token, and we are vertically integrating with all the different restaking protocols and building basically liquid restaking strategies that wrap around different AVS strategies and across different chains.
Hello everyone, I'm YJ, the co-founder of OpenLayer. So what we do is a modular, authentic data layer powered by everyone. So basically we allow anyone, they can download a browser extension or mobile app to start contributing data to our network. The data here to be both public data available on the internet, as well as the user personal data stored in the Web2 database today. And then we do the data validation and supply to the data customers. So right now we launched our ABS on the Itinerary mainnet 2 months ago. We have onboarded more than 50 operators and billions of real estate assets so far.
Awesome. YJ, let's continue with you. So data availability is really a problem, especially when you have so many decentralized networks and layers. So as a showcase, you initially started with popular commodities, like pushing the price of gold, of silver to on-chain. Can you drive us a bit towards understanding what use cases is this enabling in terms of DeFi, maybe outside of DeFi? What else can we push with data availability and oracles?
Yeah, that's a great question. So basically the value proposition we do and the problem we are solving is a data interoperability problem. And so this could be both like public data and the private user data. For the public data, the main problem we have seen is there's a massive data set which could be helpful for both on-chain and off-chain customers, but it's very hard to get them in a centralized way today. For example, that could be because of the IP block, because of the sensorization, and that's the reason we do that in a decentralized way. Everyone can join the network, and then they can supply the data for both on-chain and off-chain customers. So for the on-chain side, the developer interface is more like an Oracle, but different from the traditional Oracles. What we provide is generic, verifiable off-chain data that could be, for example, the commodities, which is just mentioned, or the sports data, things like that. And another strong use case we do is to unlock the power of the user personal data. So that could be your shopping history on Amazon or your account balance in a centralized exchange. So all of this data, Web2 data is locked in this Web2 centralized database today. But we are able to help the users to share it, generate the proof, and share to the data customers. So some of the powerful use cases we have seen include, for example, this year we are seeing a strong growing trend of the AI and AI agent customers. They want to access the user personal data to do, for example, fine-tuning based on this data. And that's something we can help provide for them. So there are lots of many use cases we are solving, we are building. Right now we focus on the real assets RWA use case and also the AI use cases. These two are our main focus for recently.
Thank you. Amadeo, this one goes out for you. So, as an LRT, you're a very hot topic. And recently there was announced a merger of two LRTs. Essentially, can you drive us through it? How does it work? Is it hard to manage multiple communities? How to manage expectations, giving the points trace, and the whole process behind it?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, we recently merged with Prime ETH from Origin, and it's we call it like an upstream merger. So mergers in crypto have been done multiple times, and we have observed them, and we basically give the users their own option to either accept this merger and basically merge over their Prime ETH in this case to YMLSD, one of the new products that's going to go live soon. And the users have their own choice. Do they want to merge to YieldNest and get rewarded, or they don't like the merger and they just want to withdraw back into OETH? That's up to the users themselves. So we're not having to manage two communities. It's basically two communities that then merge into one. So it's an upstream merge, an upstream PR, basically. So it's a very natural merger, and it's also a merger that kind of happened in almost like a week or two. It was very fast. I was already connected with the Origin and the Prime Stake communities, so I was already in touch with their main leadership there, and we basically knew each other already, so it was like very natural fit. And so far, since the withdrawals from Prime ETH have gone live, only one person has withdrawn. So it's everybody seems to be very positive and very well aligned with that. And we did that by communicating, doing a lot of AMAs, and listening to the community, and it's going actually very natural. Very nice.
You actually started as an LRT, right? But we have a unique case here as well with StakeZone. So Rose, if you can drive us through a similar process, but not of acquisition, but transition. And so you powered the growth of Manta network with your technology, where you bootstrap them to have network native rewards. I won't say yield because it's not compliant, so yeah. But now there's a proposal to transfer into restaking. What are the opportunities? What's the growth direction that you see, and how are you executing it?
Yeah, I like how you, the clarification between reward bearing and yield bearing. I think it's like two separate things, because that also distinguishes the difference between our product layers. So because of our unique architecture, our Minter contract and our strategy vault contract is separate. Basically, we can change our underlying asset through our on-chain proposal mechanism, where before we're deploying Lido, SDTH, and then deploying that into either layer, or even changing a portion of it to symbiotic is very easy for us. We don't need to issue a new ticker symbol for the Stone ETH, Liquid ETH. So that really benefits DeFi integrations, mass adoption, and we're rebalancing layer 0 omni-chain of descendant tokens. So we can easily the Stone Ethereum itself can flow seamlessly across different protocols to get that reward layer from Manta, and now with Squirrel and different layer 2 like Linear. So in essence, our underlying strategies can be changed through our on-chain proposal mechanisms, voted. So you can think of us like MakerDAO for Liquid ETH. And then that facilitates the underlying asset, native ETH, gets deployed into different yield sources. Always come and go. That's the crypto narrative, right? The waves, they always come and go. So how to always capture that while keeping the stability of your Liquid ETH. That's the only way you can go for mass adoption and better DeFi integration, and also different utility scenarios.
Awesome, thank you. So this has an actual great flow, which now we go to Dennison. Another example where Tally is pushing into giving ability to tokens that are not liquid to become liquid. So there's a variety of technology that's being developed thanks to restaking, and Tally is innovating with one of these cases. So, for example, thing that comes to my mind because I'm a DAO contributor is being able to essentially liquid stake governance token, which then can be used as a collateral on any ABS, which generates APR, and then at the same time I can maintain ability to vote, which is game-breaking, not game-breaking, but game-winning to be more precise for DAOs. Can you drive us through the process and expand a bit on other assets that actually benefit from this use case?
Yeah, so in my previous talk I talked a little bit about how actually everything is an asset, everything is collateral, and you have to always be making this decision as to whether or not your asset and collateral are actually productive things to hold. As soon as you come to the conclusion that what you're holding is not a productive asset, the smart people in the room exit really quickly, right? Because at that moment that you realize this is the maximum opportunity cost that you have in holding this asset, so you get out. What we're doing is, if you take a step back and think about it, a nice way that I phrase it is, what do you think is more valuable? Ethereum or everything that's going to be built on top of Ethereum? And then I give that as sort of a parallel to the internet, which is more valuable, the internet or everything built on top of the internet. And clearly, everything built on top of the internet is more valuable than the fiber optic wires that are out there today, right? So if we think forward in the future and we think about restaking today is really linked to the idea of ETH, right? Because they're staking ETH, you think, oh, let's restake ETH. But really, it's about reusing economic security. And economic security comes from anywhere, right? And where it's going to come in the future is from the protocols that are built on top of Ethereum. Because there's a limited amount of ETH, but there's an unlimited amount of economic security available from new ideas. Right? Fundamentally, we can build new protocols that build new ideas and generate new economic assets that we can use in restaking. So what we're doing is we're enabling protocols which today are kind of stuck in this weird regulatory purgatory, but also in this kind of meme coin land where DAO tokens kind of don't have value, despite the fact that they back billion-dollar ecosystems, right? These are L2s, these are DeFi protocols, these are oracles, right? These tokens, they manage these things, and the very, very core functionality is they have the ability to turn on fees and return value. So once we return value to these tokens, there's clearly a link between what their economic utility is and the ability to back other services with their value, right? And the greatest example I think would be like today is, would you take ETH or Uni to back your ABS? And it depends. Today you might want ETH, but tomorrow you might also want Uni, especially if it's a service that's actually being built by Uni. I give examples with L2s where they have a number of off-chain solutions and they want to back it with their own token. Why not? They have their own economic security. So we're really excited about this because it means that staking can grow so much larger. Sometimes if you take a step back and you think about the conversations we have, if it were only ETH, we're actually fighting over a very small pie, right? Like everyone in the room is building all these different things, but you're actually fighting over a very, very small amount of available economic security, right? Because if you think about it, people have been able to stake ETH for years, and we don't get that much higher above 30%, 40%, right? Like there isn't that much. We're kind of at a local maximum on the economic security available from ETH, right? So allowing protocol tokens to be used as collateral, and to be used in restaking really expands what we can do with restaking.
Thank you. Sergej, I mean, 1inch started as a DEX aggregator, and you're basically enabler and connector to all of this. We touched upon it, liquidity so many times here, and it all happens on our awesome infrastructure that backs this and gives us capabilities. But now you grew to be a one-stop shop for DeFi. Do you see restaking as too complex for onboarding of new users, or you see it as business as usual and can rapidly scale with new use cases?
I think it's very complicated for the normal users, new users especially. And yeah, we can improve by building better user experience, applications, better UX, and also better education. So, but there are definitely value add topics what risk-taking brings. Yeah, and yeah, we need just to improve and develop and continue.
It was a great intro for each individual. Now we're moving more towards group questions. So, technology is at the early stage. We established it in a previous panel. We all are aware that it's a good testing ground, and our tradition is to test in production, obviously. But so, do we see implementation in future of slashing AVSs as something that might break the rapid scalability? Or we see it as something that is normal and natural flow of things? Because obviously slashing means higher security because everything needs to be more strict.
It should be strict from our point of view. So otherwise you can play around if that's and cheat, you know. But of course then you have the problem that adoption maybe can take longer, yeah, and yeah.
Yeah, I think we should separate like in Restake. I think there's something like we're mostly now focused on network security, so things like single finality or things like express systems or branch. They're all sequencing is all network security. But I think we will see in the future we will see also a lot of other use cases that might also involve capital formation, risk underwriting, and other AVS use cases that we don't really see yet. And I think that's also what you are alluding to with like restaking, for example, tokens from bigger applications like maybe Frax or for other assets that want to decentralize part of their DeFi stack while restaking, or Tracera, which I just had a talk with. It's like they want to do threat prevention, but maybe then if you can restake your protocol and then this protocol gets hacked, the users they can see if something goes wrong. There's a certain amount of capital that will be redistributed to users if there's a hack, for example. So I think there's a lot of different use cases that can fall underneath that, and I do think for network security we should be very careful for slashing, but for other use cases the slashing might be more of a feature than a bug.
I actually think I might have a little bit of a contrarian opinion here. I think that slashing is not nice, right? And it's not easy to communicate to end users, and it's not easy to scale with slashing because that possibility is enormously like detrimental in sort of the consumer's mind, right? Like your friend Bob screws up and you lose your house. That's unacceptable as a product, and that's a huge, enormous barrier to getting to market. So I do think that there will probably be services like underwriting, but maybe, and I don't have an answer for this, so maybe I'm just like talking out of my head, but I think that there's probably a world in which we find systems that are similar in their security without actually the full slashing. Because users just aren't going to sign up to systems where they have a chance of like loss at the hands of someone that they don't know. I understand that this is how we're supposed to do it, but I think that that's an enormous barrier to consumer adoption.
Yeah, I think for the slashing, definitely some of the protocols leave slashing many more than the other protocols. So first of all, I think slashing is one of the most important, it's a critical feature of Ideaneer. So in my mind, there are three features Ideaneer should push quickly. One is fee protocol, the reward users can get. The second is slashing, and the third is the attribute for security. So in terms of slashing, I think, for example, in our use cases for OpenLayer, we leave that pretty much because what we do is using the restate assets, we can assume the data we get is correct first, and then we run the verification afterwards, so that if the node is detected to be malicious, we can slash part of the restate assets. And also, from my understanding, some of the other AVS use it in a similar way. For example, we see the ZK coprocessor, we see the FHE coprocessor. Basically, both of them use restate assets, so they can do optimistically. They can assume correctly first, and then run the cryptographic verification, which usually needs to take a few seconds. So that's one thing. The other thing I think is, so even for slashing, we see there are two types of slashing. One is the objectively attributable fault, and the other is the intersubjectively attributable fault. For example, what we use is objectively attributable fault, which means as long as you act honestly, then there's no risk you can be slashed. But there's another type of slashing which could be harder to communicate to the users, which is even though you behave in an honest way, it's still a chance you can be slashed because of the difference in the social consensus. One example here could be the airdrop of the layer 0. I see there's a vote, there's a prediction market vote, which is whether or not you think layer 0 will have an airdrop. But in reality, what we know is there is an airdrop, but you need to donate some money to Arbitrum, to some other chains first to claim that. Then we see there's a the inconsensus, which is some people consider it as an airdrop, but the other people think it's not an airdrop because you need to donate first. And then there's a debate in the community. And what I see is for identity use cases, they will solve this in the new ident token, which is intersubjectively attributable fault. But I can see this can bring more confusion and it's harder to communicate to the risk takers.
Yeah, I think that's a bit of my point right there, where you can have a consumer that says, no, clearly it's not an airdrop, I had to pay for it, and yet they're slashed because they're not in the majority. That's really hard to explain to users, that they lost their money because the majority decided to take it. That's hard.
Given everything that's been stated here, is it too early to kick off the mass scaling? Does it need to be gradual, or you believe it's free-for-all, markets should decide?
Free for all.
Yeah, I think that's why we're here, right? Free markets.
I think for mass adoption, you need something, like I was saying, like like a universal standard where you don't have to patch it up every time there's an upgrade with some DeFi protocol or a smart contract upgrade. It has to be consistent to be used. So for example, like a liquid ETH or something gets through regulation gets integrated with institutions. If they issue another ticker or something, then that has to go through the same thing again. And with like DeFi integrations as well, like I think the way we are working in this space right now is not really towards mass adoption. Like the way we build our product is just, here's like a patch for the previous problem or something. So I think we really need to think about like how we structure the product when we're building out the product, whether it's for different scenarios, different case utilities, different like long-term solutions, something that can withstand different upgrades throughout like time, and also for example, our Stone token, it can be integrated in like payment scenarios. It can be integrated in DeFi scenarios, and yeah, I think that's something that's really important. Also, having like a truly liquid asset, whereas like a lot of the LRT assets in the space are like still locked up, and you can't really like withdraw your ETH. There's like DPay there's like a 5% spread when you like swap it on different DeFi pools and stuff. So I think that needs to all come together before it reaches mass adoption.
I think it's also worthwhile asking ourselves if restaking is something that should be mass adoption. When I hear mass adoption, I hear like my grandmother using it, and just her holding LRTs and like staking and interest. Maybe it just doesn't vibe together. Right? Maybe it looks more like in the future you have a pension fund, and under the hood there's thousands of analysts who are really smart who are doing this, and of course they take a substantial cut of the rewards, but at the end of the day, maybe that's the cost of you being able to like use this product without being a rocket scientist, essentially.
But doing it now, would it put strain on the technology itself? Like in terms of when you think of hyperscaling, yes, it means onboarding tons of users. but it also means a lot of infrastructure gets attached to it, right? Which creates additional strain to the code, which never was used in that direction. And that's why I was asking, slowly or fast?
I mean, I would prefer fast.
I think it's all about accepting away the complexities, making it very easy for the user, but giving them a solution to always dig deep and find out if they want to, right? So we need to write very good risk reports or very nice disclaimers, have a very easy to use interface, but then if they want to, they can dig down as deep as they want to and actually figure out all the things if they want to go that deep, right? If you use banking products today, you can't go into weird perspectives or something, but then you will never find it's all hidden. And in crypto, we should build all in the open. But I think, I hope it's going to be a fast adoption, and I think it depends on how much more shenanigans is the traditional finance industry is going to do. The more they do that, the better the adoption will be for us. So.
Yeah, I would also say fast. Yeah, I would say from the perspective of the Pioneer as a shared trust marketplace, because right now we see there's so many risk takers. We see more than 4 million ETH on the platform. But on the demand side, I would say we only see like a few ABS. Yeah, and that's the reason with Pioneer is also scaling. They are doing the hackathon, they are hiring the top large people and engineers to basically scale the team, onboard more ABS. Yeah, actually, I want to see more ABS in the space because right now there is a strong balance between the supply side and the demand side. Yeah, that's just something I want to add on here.
Yeah, I think it's worth thinking about mass adoption from the two sides, right? From the capital providing side and the services that need that capital for security. And maybe the restaking, the mass adoption actually has to happen and people needing this technology first for the other part.
Yeah, I would like to add, you cannot force adoption. You can only create an environment where you cover demand and you generate value. As soon as you generate value, adoption comes automatically because there's a value what someone can arbitrage or take. Yeah? And it's the same happened with us. We just have seen this demand for something. We generated value by providing really nice tool what solve problem and pain and saves time and money for people. And adoption came by themselves in terms of like user adoption.
We truly pack a lot of expertise and building experience in the lineup. So I'm curious to ask, Eigen launched first and became synonym for restaking. Are we looking at winner takes it all, first mover advantage, given there are hundreds of ABSs being built already to be on top of Eigen layer, or we see competition coming up, which is often a good driver for innovation in our space, right? But then there are multiple directions. There are aggregation layers, there are specializations. So where do we see this moving forward, and are we actually seeing sort of a winner-takes-all environment?
I guess competition is great in terms of like for the user at all. And if you are alone, and you're building like one thing, and only you are in the market, and you became lazy, and the user actually will benefit from innovations, competition. So it's very important to have competitors, and I think like it's like always everywhere. There are people who compete. It's sometimes okay to be number two. So I say always to my team that I'm okay to be number two after Uniswap. Fine, they are in the front and they deal right now with second. We are happy that we have time to prepare ourselves for some other topics. I'm okay to be number two, and the same like also here. You have a lot of competitors who are building in the same space, and you should think about that other people, like other companies, also onboarding other people. Yeah, so they actually do your job as well. It's very important.
we talk with a lot of different protocols who are interested in using their governance token in restaking. And the other day, one of them said something really interesting that has stuck with me for the past few days. They said, Dennison, we want to use our token to restake on our own services that we build, and for our ecosystem to be able to build services and be aligned with us by letting the token be restaked there. But do we have to pick a restaker first? Meaning they were thinking, do we have to pick Karak? Do we have to pick Eigenlayer? Do we have to pick Symbiotic? Can't you just make that piece uniform? And that really opened in my mind the idea of like, maybe we're going to get to like commodification of restaking faster than I would have expected. I certainly got into restaking thinking this is definitely winner take all. But the fact that projects don't want to commit to a restaking framework because they're not sure. They have the same question, is it winner take all? Because if it isn't, they feel like maybe they're going to get stuck on an island where they built out something. Now ideally that should make it winner take all. But there's this strange social dynamic happening where they're just insecure about like what tech solution they should be choosing. So going forward, does it remain winner take all? I'm not sure. Maybe it actually becomes really hyper specialized with a lot of aggregation layers on top of it. I think, in the panel previously there was a question around like how much security is enough security, right? There may be products that say, hey, we're just a lot cheaper because it's a lot less economic security, but more than you need.
Yeah, I think now Eigenlayer is definitely front running it because they're building this for many years, and there's like upcoming competitors like, oh, that's interesting. So there's a lot of ground they still need to cover, and there's a lot of ground that Eigenlayer itself still needs to cover. But what's interesting, if you look into architectural designs of these systems, everybody has like really wild new ideas. So it's will be really cool to see it all be playing out. But I would say it's still, for a lot of the other competitors, still quite early. So I'm very curious to see what they will actually deploy, what kind of code they will deploy. And that is still kind of unsure. So if you say like Karak, for example, well, I would like to see what they have. I don't know. They don't publish their code. So whereas Symbiotic does have a really good architecture, and they're working very hard, so really looking forward to their release and see what they have built. And Eigenlayer, we can see what is being built. But in general, I would say it's still quite early. But I do think what I already see, I think there's a lot of different ways to do it, right? So where I think Eigenlayer is specializing in network security, is really specializing in certain vertical, and where I see Symbiotic moving more into this kind of custom slashing, like just whatever you want to build, not, they do a hands-off approach, I think. It's more open, and it's all open, but it's like, I see a lot of different architectures emerging, and I think they will all compete, and the faster and the more they compete, the better products we can build on, I would say.
So we are scaling for the users, obviously. Everything what we do is for the users. Do we see enhancement of the scaling itself in restaking by migration of the users from other ecosystems, other L2s, for example, for specific use cases of L2s, or other consumers of specific services, or do we see onboarding of brand new users as a key thing to happen?
I would like to see onboarding new users. Something that I'm a little bit worried about in the restaking ecosystem is that it's fighting over one pie, right? The opportunity really is just to massively grow, right? Like I had a tweet a couple weeks ago about how you could maybe use restaking for just like protecting yourselves against like judicial jurisdictions. Just like scale the security available on chain, off chain. Maybe there's a world in which we don't have to bother really fighting over just like how much ETH there is. But really just apply restaking kind of everything out there in the world, which would be really exciting. Because in a way, it's kind of like an insurance policy. And insurance doesn't really have any limit to how much you can scale it and the applications that you can put it towards.
Yeah, I think already, if you do you can restake any asset. You can restake LP to pools, you can restake stablecoins, you can restake ETH, you can restake validators, you can restake anything. Actually.
That's exciting for me.
Yeah, I think it's important to onboard new users and also abstracting all that complexity away from them as well. Maybe as you mentioned, your grandma restaking. I think there is a way to create like a super like abstracted process for them to be able to restake it. It could be like through like institutions or regulatory parties like custodial solutions, and it could be like, okay, you want an option of like staked ETH on top of like HashKey cloud like deck or something. So it could be like through these ways that we onboard like new adoption, like mass adoption, and this way we're not just fighting over the same pie.
Yeah, I think another good reason to focus more on the new apps is what I understand is what Ibanea provides is a quick way to bootstrap your trust network, which means this could be very valuable for some new applications, for some smaller startups to quickly bootstrap. They don't need to find operators, they don't need to do the BD part by themselves one by one, but instead they can quickly follow the developer integration and onboard on Ibanea. But on the other side, let's say if there's a more mature project, they have, for example, hundreds of millions of TVL. What they might more is, like, for example, they might want more options for other assets besides realistic ease, and also they want many more customization besides some default options to provide. So, and also they have more resource to talk to each of the like top operator in the space to onboard them. Yeah, so I think from this perspective, I also agree like new applications should have more potential space.
So, short one, last one, because we're a bit over time, but a bit of a cheeky question. And it's directed to builders, so I'm generally curious where it takes us. What's after the point mania?
We're going back to DeFi build farming.
Yeah, we just talked about. I miss DeFi summer. The first DeFi summer was actual. The innovation was so much faster than now. I think sometimes I feel things are getting a little bit stagnated because of points. Like people are taking less risks and cutting some corners. We did develop a fully deterministic point system, so we did kind of a little bit on maybe a bit over the top, but like we were like, yeah, but let's try to do it a bit better. But I think the points manner will stay because I do see it's more like an alignment system. The reason why I think projects give out points or why YieldNets gives out points is to kind of find alignment with communities and see where do we want to distribute our governance part to, and how do we kind of build a protocol or a community with people that are actually aligned with a certain vision and direction of this protocol, and at what point can we go hands off and be like, all right, so these people that have now power in this system can then govern the system, and that's I think why the points narrative took off. But I do think it got a little bit abused. But I think we're just gonna revert back to more real stuff, like soon when we get more real AVS use cases, or we get more real restake use cases. So I think the points meta is a thing that kind of overblown, but it goes back to mean, it refers back to its mean, and then eventually it will be used for what it's used for, and it's just community alignment. I think that's where it's going to go, and then eventually real products will come out of it.
Yeah, I think we did the biggest points program with Manta Store, and I think it's actually the whole points thing is setting us back from the DeFi innovative space, because it's actually super centralized, and you're manipulating how yield is distributed before it actually happens. And there's a lot of people get disappointed nowadays with the point system, right? Your funds are getting locked up. If you withdraw, you don't get the points. And it's actually, I think, and the way it's calculated, and the way it's not on chain, it's super centralized. And also, you talk to whales, and then you say, okay, I'm going to give you a boost, and then you're essentially manipulating the market, and it's steering us away from decentralized DeFi and all that. So I think it's actually setting us back.
I think points are here to stay. Your local coffee shop does points. Your local restaurant does points, your airline does points, your hotels does points, car rental does points. Everything, practically everything in your life has points if you looked around and you cared for those points. I think the point about it being the point about that being centralized is also it sort of leaves like maximum optionality open to the teams who are doing it sometimes as regulatory arbitrage, sometimes as consumer engagement, sometimes as pure marketing, and they kind of need to leave their options open a little bit early on. I do expect there to be a lot more disappointment with points ahead, but if you think about it, in the real world, most points that you collect are disappointments anyway, so I think that people should just get used to points being disappointing. That's what it is, but there are going to be some folks out there who, get the 10 cappuccinos to get one free, and the 10 pizzas to get one free, but the rest of them, they'll see it and they'll click the card now and then, but, they may come back from a marketing point of view, but, I would say just expect to be disappointed, but don't think they're going anywhere.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with this. Yeah, actually, I think the problem of this is not because of points. It's because of the value of the token when points is converted to the token. For example, we see, let's say, an easy example, the airdrop of the blast. Why people don't like points is only because of its centralization. Every airdrop is centralization. Even before points, we see the airdrop. It's more centralization, and also it's non-transparent. Like for points, I think it's a little more transparent than the traditional airdrop method. But why people don't like blast points is because when the points convert to the token, the value or the revenue the users get is not as expected as they have before. For example, if we see right now we see a strong market, or we see there are many new exciting applications in the space, we see more money inflow to the market, then everyone is happy. Centralization is not a problem anymore. So I would say centralization is just attitudes, but the deep reason or deep factor is because of the missing of the new exciting innovations in the space, which leads to a not bullish market right now. Yeah.
Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're actually, as you described, you're building an ABS already. Yeah. So essentially, by design, it implies you're thinking long-term. Aligning with everyone is here to stay is going to be for something specific, maybe a cap, maybe a boost, no promises. But does it mean that we are venturing into like a point system which is permissionless? Can it help Lido and can it help 1inch, which we were here, so before the times of points. So it was very hard to follow with assumptions as you all described. Everyone presumes some value added to it, but it doesn't need to be specific monetary value. So can it help in these use cases?
Yeah, so for Hackathon we built Point Guard because we actually analyzed a lot of the point systems and actually found out like, oh my god, like all of them are like diluting. It's not really fair for the early users. So we built Point Guard so then the point system itself doesn't have a database. So, but fully deterministic, I mean that it's kind of like on-chain actions, and if the database goes away, you can always replay that on-chain. And then there's an ABS that you can, if you can prove that we didn't give the right amount of points, we will get slashed, right? So we kind of were innovating in a kind of fun way how to kind of, at one hand, kind of showcase what an ABS is, what restaking is, and at the other hand, kind of improve our own point system. And we came up with this kind of more of like a proof of concept that we didn't fully release it, but it's more like something we have in the background. We might fully release around our TGE to kind of showcase to our users, like, look, you did these actions on chain, and you get these amount of rewards for it. I think protocols like Lido or 1inch or Frax has Fraxtal points, for example. I think it is going to be something ongoing because you do want to have distribution of value, but you want those on-chain actions. You don't know what the value of an on-chain action is beforehand. So maybe you only know the value of an on-chain action afterwards. So there you could use something like point guards or a fully deterministic point system. I do think, yes, there's every point, everybody's disappointed, but I think the reason why everybody's disappointed for a lot of the point systems is because in the background there have been a little bit of shenanigans with the points that I have witnessed. I don't know, for Blast or other ones that have gave away maybe points to certain VCs or certain deals, and I think that needs to end. And I do think point systems are not necessarily bad, but the way they're implemented and the way that people can just kind of do everything with it is not in a good way. So we should bring back crypto native values into these points, and then they might make more sense. And I think that's important. And then points are here to stay. The points in the current form, I don't think they will stay. Actually, in the current form, as like, oh, it's just this intransparent thing, and yeah, you might get something. I think points will stay, but there will be a clear outcome of what users should get for certain actions that they did. And right now, this is not the case. People were so happy that Layer 0 gave a output of an Excel sheet of, wow, I have so many airdrops. And I was like, wow, well, this should be way more transparent. If we go back to our crypto native values of why this industry actually grew, if we go back to that, then points might make sense. But we do need to implement them in a better way, I would say. Yeah.
Can I just ask one last thing here, though? Isn't there a kind of problem where you could have a transparent point system, but then you go and you do the airdrop and, oh, sorry, you're from a country that you can't claim? Right? That's kind of a weird world, because you do want to incentivize people around the world, but then you're like, but actually you can't.
Well, that goes against crypto native values. So crypto native values are, it shouldn't matter where you're from. It's just like we're building cryptographic systems that no matter what happens, like, you know, that's the whole thing, right? So that we should go back to crypto native values and should not lose that. Yeah.
Maybe that's the problem.
Thank you, everyone. It was a real pleasure hosting you today. And we'll stick around shortly, so if you want to ask some questions after the panel, feel free to. Thank you.
Okay.